But anyway, that and a few other experiences, and some of my newfound wealth was on paper, and that disappeared. So sure enough, from poor to rich and from rich back to poor, what do you do now? What occurred to me was that even though my money was gone, I still had the skills, and the skills proved to be more valuable than the money. So I just simply went back to work, went back to the street, went back using the formula I had used in the first place to do well, and made many times more what I did the first time. But I think that's the key. You just have to go back to work. And part of it was I was willing to readjust my lifestyle. The fancy cars had to go, the homes and all that stuff had to go, and you go back to a modest apartment in a modest place and pull everything down to start over rather than trying to keep living up here when you should have to start over back to the street or whatever you have to do. And just put it together again. No different than the farmer who plants in the spring and it's all gone when the hailstorm is finished. He goes back in the spring and says, let's try it one more time. I can't imagine 2 years in a row. Once in a while, maybe there would be 2 years in a row when you get wiped out, but not that often. So you try it again. And probably from the experience, if you treat it right and keep the right attitude, you'll be stronger than you were the first time around or the second time around. But everything comes down to attitude and philosophy. When I first started working on my fortune as well as my living, my mentor said it depends on your attitude. If you say, I'm working a little extra time to pay some bills, that'd be one thing. But if you said, I'm working a little extra time to start my fortune, see, that makes getting out of bed totally different. To get up to pay some extra bills is one thing. To get up to lay the foundation for your fortune, see, is a whole different attitude and mindset and philosophy. So if you have the right attitude, no matter what's happened, if you just readjust your attitude and your philosophy and a whole new mindset and start again. Some of the great fortunes are made after the person turns 50, 60, and the reason is because with all the ups and downs that happen to them in those accumulation of years, now when an idea or a new burst of energy or vitality or goals sets in, they've got all this experience to invest. That's why these fortunes become incredible even after 50 and 60. When you're 20, you don't have much experience to invest. Doesn't mean you can't do okay and can't really climb the ladder fairly quickly. And when you're 30, you have a bit more experience to invest if something happened and you had to start over. But sure enough, 50 and 60, you've got a good handful of years of experience to invest, which may make all the difference in the world and now how it goes. And it's true, you can tip either way, to be discouraged by it all or to be inspired by it all. And that's part of the mystery. The magic is you can turn around and make another fortune. The mystery is not everybody will do that. Some will use it as a reason to succeed, others use it as a reason to give up. Same circumstance. They followed two boys, twins. The father of these two boys was a scoundrel and a drunk. But as they followed the two boys later, one of them turned out to be a scoundrel and a drunk. And they asked him, how come your life turned out like this? And he said, well, what would you expect, right? My father was a scoundrel and a drunk. What else would you expect? The other boy had turned out to be a professional, doing very well. And they asked him, how come you turned out to be a professional? And he said, I didn't want to be like my father. Same father. One used it as an excuse for living a poorer life, and the other one used it as a reason to make all the necessary change. A big share of our life is going to be shaped by attitude and by influence, the people around us. Good question to ask. Who am I around, and what are they doing to me, and is that okay? Those are three major questions. Who am I around? What are they doing to me, and is that okay? What have they got me reading? Where have they got me going? What have they got me doing? The people I'm around. How have they got me thinking and behaving? That's a good mature analysis. Who am I around and what are they doing to me? And is that okay? And if it's okay, fine. If it isn't okay, change it. Association can make all the difference in the world in your future. We have to practice limited association. Some people you can be around a few hours, but not a few days. And some people you can be around a few minutes, but not a few hours. And then some people you have to walk away. And it's helpful if somebody comes along and helps us in, a moment of stress and distress and offers a book or offers some advice. They just say, I'll be here when you need me. Sometimes you don't need somebody to, come live with you or be right there to hold your hand. But as long as you know they're available, if it gets a little tougher, call, things like that, that's very valuable. And if you've got some good friends, that they'll be there. I lost a friend just a few years ago. David. I used to say of David, if I was stuck in a foreign jail accused unduly somewhere, if they allowed me one call, I would call him. And the reason is he would come and get me. No questions asked. That's what we call a real friend. And hopefully in times of stress, or if you've fallen out of the tech sky, right, and it's, the paper's all burned up, the money's all gone and the project turned into reverse. Hopefully you've got some around, somebody, and all of us really have somebody. But part of the good instruction is to make the kind of friends on your way up who will be there on your way down and say, come in. Some of them will say, I've been expecting you. The way you were going, I knew it wouldn't be long, right? Until the bubble would burst and everything would go in reverse. Come on in. Let's talk things over. So make some good friends so that no matter what happens, when things do turn upside down, you'll have some to rely on for wise counsel. I've had some of those in my life. They've helped save my life, save my career, save everything. Walk the beach with somebody that cares about you and is an excellent friend where you can really unload and try to see if you can't sort it out. Sometimes a business venture that goes wrong is like being in a wreck. It takes a while for your mind to clear. So if you've been in a wreck and you're out there kind of wandering around, it's helpful if somebody takes you by the hand and says, hey, let's sit down here for a while until your mind stops spinning. There's no way to put a value on that, how valuable that is. The amateur loses a close game and probably affects them for a long time. Or on the golf course, makes a poor shot and it affects the rest of his play. But a pro, Tiger Woods makes a poor shot, but he knows he has to settle in and not let that one affect the next one. That's the difference between an amateur and a pro. Or we lose a close game. The amateur loses a close game. It affects him maybe forever. But the pro loses a close game, and they are affected the same way. Don't get between them and the locker door. They'll put a dent in you, right? So they're angry and they're probably upset, but it doesn't last long, maybe a few hours. A few hours later, by the time they've had a shower and something to eat, they're saying tomorrow night we'll run them off the court. Not next year, tomorrow night. So the key really to quick recovery is have something to go for right away. I'll put this together within the next 90 days. I'll never be the same. Instead of letting it affect you for a year, couple of years, try to put something together quickly. It may not be the total answer, but it's the answer for now to get you to start walking away. Because one of the greatest things I learned in my studies with Earl Schoaf is life does not give us what we need. Life gives us what we deserve. You don't reap a harvest because you need it. You reap a harvest because you deserved it. You planted in the spring and took care of it in the summer. One of the ways to help a mother on welfare. The person comes with the welfare check, but now with better information, she says to Mary, Mary, the next time I come with the welfare check for you and your children, here's a bucket of paint and a paintbrush. And if these posts are painted, and if the front door is painted, the next time I come back next month, you get the money. Only as a starting point of having the sense of not getting something because she needs it, but getting something because she deserves it. Not that painting the two posts on the door deserves $500, but it's a start. Then the next time, the welfare lady says, if this fence is painted, and if these weeds are gone, and if these flowers are planted, the next time I come, now you get the $500 again. Starting to walk Mary from her desperate situation into a mode and philosophy and thinking of what else could I do to deserve more money. It's a whole difference in trying to get something because you need it rather than getting something because you deserve it. How can I learn to deserve it? My daughter would say, I need $10. No answer. I've got to have $10 for school tomorrow. No answer. Then they would remember. Daddy, how could I earn $10? Response. Here's how you can earn $10. This family's got plenty of money. I mean, the vaults here are full, but you got to have the magic key. And the magic key to unlock the vault here is not to get something because you need it, but to get something because you deserve it. Great training for kids or the mother on welfare, whoever. How can I begin the process of deserving? That's what Mr. Schoaf called personal development. Learning new strategies. It's like the sailboat. The wind blows on every sailboat, but the difference in destination is the set of the sail, not the blowing of the wind. I learned the law of sowing and reaping. And in the law of sowing and reaping is also the story of the law of averages. Jot this down. The story of the sower comes from the Bible. I'm an amateur on the Bible, but this is such a useful story. Here's what the story says. And take the notes because the drama's in the details. The sower was ambitious. Evidently he was ambitious. When you read the whole story, you'll conclude, yes, this was an ambitious sower. Here was number 2. He had excellent seed. The sower who sowed the seed had excellent seed. And the excellent seed could be an excellent opportunity, an excellent product, an excellent store.
So we've got an ambitious sower with excellent seed. But now here's the rest of the details of the story. For your information, for the drama of your life, so you can understand things better. Learning some of this is how I got rich by age 31. Number one, it says the sower goes out to sow the seed, but the first part of the seed falls by the wayside, and the birds get it. So jot this down. The birds are going to get some of the seed. The birds are going to get some of the seed. Now you say, well, Mr. Rohn, what does that mean? Well, I invite John to come to a meeting. He said he'd be there Tuesday night. Tuesday night I show up, John isn't there. I say, I wonder why John didn't make it. Now I know the answer. The birds. The birds. John had this great idea of coming to the meeting to look at an opportunity, and somebody stole it and said, you're not going to go see network marketing. And he says, well, maybe not. So have you jotted that down now? The birds are going to get some. Now when the birds get some, you've got two options. Number one is to chase birds and say, well, let me get a hold of the person that talked him out to come to the meeting. I'll tear him a new page. But I wouldn't do this. Here's what happens if you go chasing birds. You leave the field. If you go chasing birds now, you leave the field, which is going to distract from your future, not add. So you can't chase birds and try to straighten this stuff out. Here's what it is. It's just one of those things. And here's the best comment when things are a little disappointing. Isn't that interesting? You just have to say, I thought sure he would be there. He promised. He promised. But I know it was the bird. And you just have to say, isn't that interesting? Now, here's the rest of the story. It says, the sower kept on sowing. See, that was the secret to his success. He kept on sowing. And if you keep sowing, you can sow more than the birds can get because there aren't enough birds. If you keep sowing, there are some birds, but there's not enough because the law of averages will work for you. My mentor taught me, he said, you know, Mr. Rohn, there's only 9 or 10 real nasty, miserable people in the whole world. Now, he says they move around a lot, you know, and you're liable to... You'll bump into one once in a while. But when you bump into one, you say, there's only 9 more like you. I can handle that. In the whole world? Okay. Now here's what else it says. The sower now keeps sowing the seed. Now the seed falls, the story says, on rocky ground where the soil is shallow. And the rocky ground where the soil is shallow is not of your making, because you had excellent seed and you were an ambitious sower. So the rocky ground where the soil is shallow is not of your making. But here's what it says what happened. This time, the little seed that falls in the ground starts to grow, and the little plant starts to grow. But the first hot day, it withers and dies. Not an easy thing to watch. I finally get John started. Sure enough, 3 or 4 days later, somebody says, boom, he's gone. Doesn't show up at the second meeting. And I say, I thought sure John would last a week. What happened? Jot this down. The hot weather is going to get some. And this is not of your making. Here's what you must say when that happens. Isn't that interesting? What can you do? The answer is nothing. You say, well, I'm going to try to change this. I wouldn't take that class. You know, the sun comes up in the east. Somebody says, why is that? I wouldn't spend much time on that. Just let that happen. Don't go for this why stuff. I'm giving you the answers here. The answers is in the structure and the consequences and in the deal. The answer is in the deal. Anything beyond that is not worth studying. You say, well, how come some just last a little while? I wouldn't sign up for that class. Here's the answer. Some don't stay. You just have to jot that down. And when some leaves, you say, that's one of those that don't stay. Now you know what category to put them in. And you can't solve this now. You can't, it's like rearranging the seasons. You can't fool with that. All you can do is cooperate with the way things are set up. I didn't set it up. You say, well, it shouldn't be this way. Well, when you get your own planet, you can rearrange this whole deal. But on this planet, you're a guest. You got to take it as it comes. Now, here was the secret to the ambitious sower with good seed. It said he kept on sowing. Now, here's what he had to do to keep on sowing. He had to discipline his disappointment. This is a key phrase now to use the rest of your life. You must learn to discipline your disappointment, because you didn't set up the setup, and some are not going to stay, and that is not of your making. Now, if you made gross errors and you ran them off, see, that'd be different. Now, you're responsible for that. But if it's in the normal course of things, this is the way things are. Now, here's what it says. The sower keeps on sowing. Now it says the seed falls on thorny ground. And somebody says, well, how much of this do you have to go through? Well, hang on. It's not the end of the story now. Now the little seed falls on thorny ground. And now the little plant starts to grow again. But as the little plant starts to grow, the thorns choke it to death. And it dies. So jot this down. the thorns are going to get some, and that's not of your making. And what are these thorns? The story even called these little thorns, little cares, little distractions, little somethings. Who knows what all they are? I say, John, we had a meeting last night, you weren't here. John says, well, I can't make every meeting. I say, why not? You're part-time. He said, well, the screen door came off the hinges. And you just can't let your house fall apart. You got to take some time and fix things up. And I can hear the thorns going, He says some extra trash had piled up in the garage. You can't let mountains of trash take over. You got to keep your trash hauled out. People who let little things cheat them out of big opportunities. People who let little things cheat them out of big opportunities. And you feel almost helpless. What could I do about that? And that's nothing. And you say, well, why is this? I'm asking you not to sign up for that class. It's just the way it is. Like winter following fall and spring following winter. So if you got that, the thorns are going to get some. But now here's the good news. Let's read the rest of the story now quickly. The sower now what? Keeps on sowing the seed, keeps on sharing the story, keeps on giving an invitation. Yes, the invitation can be more powerful for me as it was 1 year later than it was the first month. Because now I'm saying I'm making twice as much money part-time as I'm making on my full-time job. Yes, the story can be more powerful, but the law of average is still going to work. But now here's what the story said. Finally, the seed falls on good ground. Finally, the seed falls on good ground. Now put this in parentheses. It always will. If you keep sowing. If you share a good idea long enough, it will fall on good people. But now here's the rest of that story. Some of the good ground did 30%, and some of the good ground did 60%, and some of the good ground did 100%. You say, well, why the difference in numbers? I wouldn't sign up for that class. Go on.
I can't really explain it. It's probably more of a mystery to me than it is a reality, but it's there. And it helped to establish my very simple theology. And my simple theology goes like this. Number one, I believe God is just, which means I'm probably in trouble. Number two, I believe God's mercy endures forever, which means I probably have an excellent chance. It's an incredible feeling, absolute trust. It's like being financially independent. My father said, son, someday you've got to know this incredible feeling where nobody nor anything has a claim on you or your assets. He said it's an incredible feeling. And until you get there, you really don't know what it's like. Someone can tell you. And I think it's true of absolute trust. Is something that is so unique. I don't even know how to teach it. All I know is it wonderfully happened for me all those years ago. And it helps me even with my high-profile, busy, chase around the world, share ideas kind of life. It gives me an underlying serenity that is absolutely incredible. It makes the days busy but peaceful. It makes the months highly active, but keeps me anchored. And it's incredible. I think the seeds of the idea and the experience came from my parents, who laid this incredible foundation for me when I was growing up. So I've lived an extraordinary life. And if I was to pick one thing that I think serves me so well in traveling the world, talking to people, being an entrepreneur, busy as can be, hopefully for another 40 years, is this idea of absolute trust. There's a little phrase I think that's helpful for everyone if you can finally come to that conclusion that God's in control. Once I really believed that, I started sleeping like a baby. I said, now if God's walking the floor pulling his hair out, then I'm worried. There are some things that should, make you worry. If you're in the midst of a battle and you walk into the general's tent and he's sobbing, I mean, it's time to worry. So I think that's what it is ultimately, trusting God, that God's in control, and that however he has designed for it all to work out is fine with me. And if it seems turbulent and if it doesn't seem to fit together at the moment, I can get through that easily.
Let me first give you my definition of financial independence. Number one, the ability to live from the income of your personal resources. This should be every person who lives in a free country, especially a capitalistic country. This should be everyone's goal, to someday be able to live from the income of your personal resources. Now, how many resources you need, right, depends on how you want to live. But if you wish to live modestly, it doesn't take all that many resources over a fairly brief period of time to have enough resources to live modestly. If you wish to live more lavishly, of course, you need to accumulate more resources. But that's my view of financial independence, so that you can live from the income of your resources. Now, here's what else that does. Now you can choose the work you do. Now you can choose to work or not work. Now you can work not because you have to, but because you want to. When we talk to kids about financial independence, we say, do what you have to as quick as you can so you can do what you want to as long as you can. Next key phrase. Economics is major. Everybody should major in economics because it's such a vital part of your life. A paycheck is so vital because, first of all, it provides for you and the family's survival. Second, it provides for the opportunity of success. Some people feel we shouldn't spend that much time talking about money, but we really should. Someone says, well, you know, money is the root of all evil. Not true. Here's what it really says. The love of money is the root of all evil. And I'm sure everyone here has dispensed with the idea of falling in love with money, because that serves no purpose. Here's what's noble, what money can do, the project it can support, the relief from debt it can create, building a financial wall around your family nothing can get through. So economics is major. The key, of course, is what you do with it. If you earn a lot, you should give a lot. Key phrase from antiquity, here's what it says. If you've been given much, now much is required. If you've been given great responsibility, much is required. If you've been given much wealth, now much is required. Everyone has to solve this about the money to go for. Should you go for the money? Should you go for success? You should earn as much as you possibly can in the reasonable time devoted to economics, job, business. Reasonable time devoted to economics, job, business, future, enterprise. With that enterprise and with that job, the key is to earn as much as you possibly can, as you balance your life with everything else. Not at the sacrifice of your friendships, not at the sacrifice of values, not at the sacrifice of integrity, not at the sacrifice of wiping out other values in your life, but within balance of everything. Go as far as you can, earn as much as you can, share as much as you can. Jot this question down. Is it possible in America to multiply your income by 10? Kids would be fascinated with this question. Is it possible to multiply your income by 10? And the answer is, of course. Yes. Could you repeat that after me? Yes. Of course. That helps to emphasize it. That's called exclamation point. And kids with wide eyes will say, is that right? Can you start at the bottom and someday multiply your income by 10? The answer is, of course, of course, of course. Now, if you multiplied it by 10, can you think of anybody that makes $500 an hour? I'm telling you, the Beverly Hills lawyers where I live make at least $500 an hour. Now we've multiplied income by 10 again. Would it be possible to multiply your income by 10 and then multiply it by 10 again? Now, see, that's a little weak. I'm trying to make you believers. To those that believe, here's what Scripture says. All things are possible. There isn't anything that's impossible. The most incredible things are possible to believers, not hopers. Not hopers, believers. $500 an hour. Would it be possible to multiply your income by 10 again? Of course. $5,000 an hour? What do you suppose I get paid? I'm telling you, it's possible to multiply your income by 10 and then by 10 and then by 10. I lecture with Norman Schwarzkopf, the old general. Guess what he gets paid for his speech? $65,000 for 1 hour. $65,000, not $5,000, right? $65,000. I had lunch with Colin Powell, and I was on that speaking panel for one of those multi-speaker seminars. And I think he got paid like $70,000. It's a fun lunch with somebody that gets paid $75,000 per hour. Unbelievable. Now, the person that's on up here, right, like Bill Gates and, who knows who else here, that makes $68 million in 1 year. We say, well, is that legitimate to pay someone $68 million in 1 year? And the answer is, of course. If they helped the company make $1 billion last year, would the company pay them $68 million? And the answer is yes, it's chicken feed. It ain't that much. Key phrase to jot down, everything is relative. Everything is relative. What might seem like a lot now, I'm telling you, some time from now for you won't seem that much. You say, wow, I was a small thinker back then, thinking, $4,000 a month was a lot of money. $8,000 a month was really something. I remember those days when $8,000 a month was unbelievable. And then $15,000 a month. Wow, I couldn't believe it. How about $20,000 a month? Incomprehensible. And I flew on by that. How about $30,000 a month? I flew on by that. Unbelievable. How about 50? How about 80,000 a month? I remember when I went right on by. It was incredible. Getting paid by the week. I remember when it was, $20,000 a week, and then $30,000 a week. How about $40,000 a week? How much property will they let you own? As much as you want. All you want and all you wish. Here's the country you live in. All you want and all you wish. That's about as good as we can make it. Next. Here's the philosophy of the rich and the philosophy of the poor. First, the philosophy of the poor. Poor people, now this is not demeaning now. This is simply people of modest means. People of modest means tend to spend their money and invest what's left. If they have anything left over, they might save it or invest it. That's the philosophy, the poor philosophy. To spend your money, save what's left. Here's the philosophy of the rich. To invest your money and spend what's left. It's the same money. It's just a different attitude and a different philosophy. Either spend your money, save what's left, or invest your money, spend what's left. Now here certainly is the better philosophy. To invest your money and spend what's left. Let's talk now about what to do with the dollar, especially for teenagers and for kids. This is really important because this is one of the best places to start when you're like 15 years old, mid-teens. This is a great place. What to do with the dollar. Now here's the tendency on attitude, because attitude determines so much of our lives. What difference does it make if a child has $1 when you ask what should he do with it? It's only a child and it's only $1. But see, here's where it all begins. Your financial journey begins with what you do with the first dollar. That's where it begins. Now sure, you can do the wrong things and finally correct that, get on a better path, but it all begins on what you do with your resources. Jot this phrase down. It's one of the best for the weekend. Here's the 2 challenges of life. Number 1, the development of our full potential. That's challenge number 1. Challenge number 2 is the wise use of all our resources. That sums up life in general. The development of all of our potential and the wise use of all our resources. One of our resources is time, and we talked about that. Now we're going to talk about the wise resource called money. And let me share with you now a little plan. Because when I met Shof, and he asked me about my financial condition, he said, how much money have you saved and invested the last 6 years? And I said 0. He said, not a good number. Here's what I told him. If I had more money, I'd have a better plan. Now jot this down, because here's what he said. If you had a better plan, you would have more money. Next key phrase, it's not the amount that counts, it's the plan that counts. So let's start with something now as seemingly as small as $1. What should you do with it? Here's what we teach, teenagers especially. You should never spend more than 70 cents. Never spend more than 70 cents of each dollar you earn, or each dollar that comes your way, by gift or by labor. Now, you've got to have some plan what to do with your dollar. I've developed this little plan simply for suggestion, and then you've got to do the rest to revise it and do whatever you want to with it. But here's what I teach. Never spend more than 70 cents. You got to pick something, some number. This is the best one I could figure out. Now we've got another 10 cents, and another 10 cents, and another 10 cents, which is the 30 plus the 70, which is the full dollar. So we spend nothing more than 70 cents. Now what do we do with the other 30? Here's some of the most important information. 10 cents is for charity, or for church, or whatever worthy projects you think you might engage in. Here's one of the best things to teach kids, generosity. Because first we're going to teach abundance, to provide more than you could use for yourself. The be fruitful philosophy means to produce more than you need, so you have more than necessity. You have some to share. Some churches teach a 10%, a tithe they call it, which is fine. The key is to either administer this 10 cents yourself, or to give it to some institution, a church or whatever, and let them spread it around. Let them put it where it's needed. Now, if you're going to give to some charity or church, you must let them take you on the tour and show you where it goes. Okay, if you part with the money, let them give you the tour. Here's where the 10% goes if you're going to tithe. Because now that gives you great joy to give 10, because you say, hey, here's what it's doing, here's what it's doing, here's where it's going, here's who gets it. Okay. Now the next 10 cents is called the use of capital. Here's what capital and capitalism is. So jot this down. Capital is any value you set aside. Capital is any value you set aside to be invested in an enterprise that brings value to the marketplace, hoping to make a profit. That's what capital and capitalism is. I can say it in one sentence. Capital is any value you set aside to be invested in an enterprise that brings value to the marketplace, hoping to make a profit. Now, the capital is the value you set aside. Taking capital and investing it in an enterprise and bringing the value to the marketplace we call capitalism. Capital and capitalism. Now, who can understand this? First of all, the farmers understand it. Here's what seed corn is. It's capital. It's seed corn means the seed that you set aside to be planted in the ground, take care of in the summer, hoping to have a profit and a harvest in the fall. So the farmer sets aside his seed corn. Question, would he let his family eat it? No, this seed is not to be eaten. It's to be invested in the ground, to take a risk, cared for in the summer, harvested and multiplied in the fall. Now, the same is true of some of your money. If you set aside, and I suggest, part of your capital should be set aside for an enterprise to show a profit. And we can teach kids the early fundamentals of capitalism. Now, once the kid has $1 profit, now what should he do with the dollar? This is the formula that I've come up with, what to do with that dollar. Don't spend more than 70 cents, 10 cents for church or charity, 10 cents to invest back into your business so that someday you can buy more than one bottle and get it a little cheaper so that when you sell it you make a little more money. Now here's the other 10 cents. It's 10 cents that you invest and let someone else use it. This is called active capital, where you actually engage in the enterprise that makes a profit. Now another 10 cents is for passive capital, where you let someone use this 10 cents out of every dollar. You put it in a bank that pays interest. They use it and they pay you for the use of this money. That's called passive capital. So we've got active capital and passive capital. Maybe you invest this in a stock, eventually if you have enough money, and the stock pays you dividends, and also there may be an increase in the value of the stock. So this is the little formula I come up with. 70, 10, 10, and 10. It's very simple. And kids can figure it out, kids can understand. Enterprises that kids can be involved in starting early. Now, when you first start, if you're an adult now, you may be in such bad shape financially that you couldn't do the 70, 10, 10, and 10. If you're in real bad shape, you may have to do the 97, 1, 1, and 1, because it may take this to pay your bills if you haven't had a good plan up until now. But jot this down now. It's not the amount that counts, it's the plan that counts. So let's say you were in such poor financial shape, you had to start 97, 1 for charity, 1%, another 1% for active capital, another 1% for passive. Now here's the key. To get these numbers starting up and get this number starting down. If you will actually do this, you can't believe how exciting it is to watch the numbers change. Don't spend more than 70% of your income. 10% for church or charity. 10 cents active capital, buy and sell, see if you can make a profit. And 10% for passive capital, let somebody else use your money. Pay you interest, dividends, stock increase, whatever. It's a pretty good plan. 70, 10, 10, and 10. A lady in Mexico the other day said, I heard your plan 10 years ago. I followed it. She said, I'm now a millionaire. I own 2 different properties because you also said don't buy the second car until you've bought the second house. It's not cars that make you rich. It's real estate that makes you rich. She said, I'm now about to buy the 3rd house, so I'm now giving myself the luxury of buying the 3rd car. Simple little ideas. And she said, I followed the 70, 10, 10, and 10, taught it to other people. They're following it and getting great results. One thing I didn't know when I was growing up and found out at age 25, that you could work both on your living and your fortune at the same time if you had a good plan. Don't just work on your living, work on your fortune. Work on becoming financially independent. Financial independence is the ability to live from the income of your personally invested resources. And the day you can finally do that, what's exciting about that is that now you can work for joy and not for necessity. And strangely enough, you probably work a lot harder for joy than you do for necessity. I have a unique friend. He started an enterprise, and by the time he had it up and running about 2.5, 3 years, he didn't have to work anymore the rest of his life. So now he's financially independent. But then he created a vast fortune, that next 20 years of his life, simply because he was working for joy and not for necessity. So get to that position as quick as you can. So I'm now teaching, work both on your living and your fortune. The reason for earning a living is to make a fortune, not necessarily from your living, but from what you earn, invested wisely. I talked to a lady the other day.
she said, Mr. Rohn, I'm in real estate. I said, wonderful. How many properties do you own? She said, no, I sell real estate. I said, well, let me ask you one more time. How many properties do you own? Finally got the message across. I said, the reason for selling real estate is to earn the money to buy real estate. If you sell real estate, you make a living. If you buy real estate, you make a fortune. She said, I got the message. So don't buy the second car till you've bought the second home. I say figure out what you think is best for you and try that. Part of it's a matter of age. At my age now, you make more conservative investments. Younger, you make bolder investments that could pay big dividends if it cashed in well. But a mixture of things that have a chance to have some good growth. But I think you have to decide your own aversion to risk, whether or not you can really tolerate it. I remember when those discoveries started coming out, if you paid off your home in 15 years instead of 30, by adding what, one more payment a year, some simple plan, you saved more than the price of the house. Everybody said, whoa, just with some better information. Now, some people really don't care as long as their payments are low. They'll pay the extra price of the house just because the payments are low. And that's one philosophy, but it's not a good one. And if you've got credit cards, right, that are at 14% and 16%, if you pay off of those, it's hard to find an investment, especially these days, that'll pay that kind of return. So paying off your credit cards, paying off your home in 15 years instead of 30. Of course, now you can buy a home, get a 15-year mortgage. You know, why not save? Why not be prudent? Why not be careful? It's good practice. Even if you're rich, it's just good practice to be as prudent as you can, not to be stingy, not to try to cheat somebody, but to do wise things with your resources. Two things, the big challenge in life adventure. One, the full development of all of your potential. That's number one. Second is the wise use of all your resources, including your money and your time, which are two of the major resources, how to use your time and how to use your money. But teaching kids proper philosophy, it's important not to have a savings account. It's important to have an investment account. Just to change in terminology, it's the same money, but it depends on whether you put it in an investment account or a savings account. All kids need is just one or two little lessons, and they can say, well, it'd be a lot better to put it in an investment account instead of a savings account. I mean, that doesn't take 10 years of college to figure out. Sometimes you got to have some help. Go to somebody and say, look, here's how deep I'm in, and here's the real deal. What could I do? Find somebody who's got some good alternate plans. If you go this way, it's a bit severe. Maybe the family can't quite tolerate that severe program for the future. Here's one a little better, but it'll just take a little longer. Because there's nothing more exhilarating, really, in terms of self-worth and self-esteem than just getting started. At least I'm not in reverse anymore. Who was it that said that if you're in a hole, stop digging? Right? At least stop where you are and see if you can't now build a ladder, the best one you can design at the moment, with some help. But I think if it's a matter of finances, and if you're overwhelmed and you've gotten in trouble with credit cards and all, I'd find somebody who knows some pretty good strategy for getting out of it. They've even got some programs, right, that'll hold off the collection people, not to go bankrupt, but just to give you, if they're convinced that you've gotten a new plan, rather than push you into bankruptcy, there's some places you can go that'll help you sort of rearrange your whole portfolio and start digging your way out. And it's surprising, once you start making progress, you get excited about it. The numbers don't have to be huge and big as long as you're making progress. I started out age 25. I'm working hard to make a living, and I found out how to start working on my fortune. That might not be for everyone, but you can turn part of your present income, if you think I've got to stick with a job for 30 years, retire, if that's your mindset and you want to do that, fine. But now you must wisely use the resources from that income to make a profit, even if you let other people use the money and pay you interest and dividends. If at least you do that, whether you buy and sell or not. But who couldn't? If you worked on a job for 40 years, why couldn't you buy a piece of property and sell it for more than you paid for it? Why couldn't you buy a home, sell it for more than you paid for it? Why couldn't you buy a piece of property that needs repair, find somebody to repair it, and sell it for more than you paid for it? Why couldn't you do that over the next 40 years, as well as work on the job and punch the clock and do your duty and retire as a faithful employee? Why not work both on your fortune and your living? Why not? If the least you did was to take part of what you've earned as a living and let someone else use it and pay you for the use, if you did that over 40 years, you would easily be financially independent, not from your job, but from your investment. Then if you can find other ways because it's stimulating. Who was it said? Was it Eisenhower? Someone said, find a piece of property and leave it better than you found it. Just something. Claude Olney, who put together a program called Where There's a Will, There's an A, became highly successful as an infomercial. He came to my seminars years and years ago before he put that program together. And he said, I've got an idea. What do you think? I said, it's a winner. Sure enough, made him millions. He made money on every car he bought because of the incredible way he took care of it and the way he made it shine and gleam so that when he got ready to sell it, it was worth more than when he bought it. That was one of his projects. I'm going to make money on every car I buy. See, it just depends on your attitude and your philosophy. And the answer is, why not? Amazing. Two different people with two different attitudes. One lets it all go because it doesn't seem to make a difference. Another one says, I make money on whatever I touch. Whatever I touch gets better. It doesn't get dirty. It gets better. A guy who owned a bunch of apartments said to me, most everybody leaves the apartment that they rent worse than they found it. I said, you gotta be kidding. He said, no. Some leave it trashed. I said, impossible. He said, no. I said, what a reputation. What I touch turns to trash instead of gets better. Amazing. But what if you had the attitude or the mindset, I'm going to leave wherever I am, I'm going to leave it better than I found it. Not just what it did for the world, because it's a better place.
Keep strict account. Part of it is just for habit, and the other part is for self-esteem, and the other part is for future benefit. Keep strict accounts. It's just a good habit to have. It's like picking up the trash, not throwing the toothpick cellophane on the floor. It's just, it becomes the person you are. Keep good accounts. Here's the next one. Pay your taxes. I finally became a happy taxpayer. Here's what paying taxes does. Feeds the goose that lays the golden eggs called American opportunity. You say, well, the goose eats too much. Probably true. But make the note, better a fat goose than no goose. Here's the next key. Everybody should pay. My personal philosophy is everybody should pay federal taxes as well as state or whatever else. It's not wise for the government to let 1/3 of American citizens off the federal tax roll. Why? Because that robs them. Appreciate that. Looks like I could run for office here. Here's what it does. If you let them off the federal tax rolls, it robs them of the dignity. They have to pay state taxes. They have to pay sales tax. I've been trying to write this book for so long called, Of Course Kids Should Pay Tax. When a kid in California walks into 7-Eleven and buys something that costs $1, the proprietor asks the kid for 8 more pennies. Kid says, what's these 8 pennies? Says, that's the taxes. The kid says, I'm only 8 years old. And the proprietor says, congratulations, you're my youngest taxpayer. Give me the money. Should kids pay taxes? Yes. If you want to ride your bicycle on the sidewalk instead of in the mud, you got to cough up the 8 pennies. What if you're poor? Do you pay the 8 pennies? Yes. What if you're rich? Yes. Meaning everybody should pay. The same should apply to federal. I don't care if it's $10 a year. I don't care if it's only $100 a year. As poor as you might be, you've got to say, no matter how poor I am at the moment, I will make my contribution. Key. So everybody should pay. I got to pay from my aircraft carrier. I got to pay some young volunteer that risks his life on night landings on an aircraft carrier. You got to pay if you want that kind of security in the world. Of course, we may disagree sometimes with government policy and all the rest, but I'm telling you, everybody needs to pay. Now, here's one of the best stories ever written. According to the record, Jesus and his disciples one day were at the synagogue, and on this occasion they had an interesting project, and that was to stand outside the synagogue as people started coming in, putting money in the treasury of the synagogue. And as Jesus and his disciples stood outside watching the people come by, putting their money in the treasury, it said some came with large amounts, put them in the treasury. It said some came by with modest amounts, some came by with small amounts. Then along comes a little lady, and she puts 2 pennies in the treasury. And Jesus said to his disciples, look at that. They said, 2 pennies? What's 2 pennies? He says, no, you don't understand. She gave more than everybody else. They said, 2 pennies is more than everybody else? He said, yes, because I'm positive her 2 pennies represented most of what she had.